Hi and welcome, I'm Elvira Boulet from the Dimitrov Boulet Piano Duo and welcome to another Music Fundamentals class. In today's lesson I am going to talk about different endings, so let's just jump right in. The first thing I want to show you is just a normal ending, and this is an example of how an ending looks like, and we call that in music terms, we call that fine. Okay, so let's jump straight right into another one that I wanted to show you. It's actually from this beautiful valse by Chopin. I'm having a lot of examples from the scores of Chopin lately because I want to show you endings that typically appear in music that a lot of people want to play. So right here we see this double stripes, this bar ending, which is not marked as a single vertical line but a double vertical line. So it's not an ending per se, it is more of a transition. And this more indicates that there will be a change, that there's a different part of the piece coming up. So for example, it's also a tonality change in this case. We go from this to minor. So you see that this is really a change in tonality as well as a different character of the piece, really a different section. So for this, you don't have to do anything, but I still wanted to include this in the list. So you know that whenever you see this, you know that a new section of the piece is coming up. And that's good to know, even if you don't have to do anything, it's still good to know. Okay, so let's jump right back to endings. I want to show you this sign. So whenever you see this sign, it means that you have to repeat. Now there's several different situations in which we can see this. I want to show you this one first. So in this first situation, we have a sign for repeating here, but we don't have any other sign of repetition, and I'll explain to you what I mean in a moment. So when you have only this sign here and nothing else that you can see, what you're going to do is you're going to go back to the very beginning and you're going to repeat this entire section. So once more, you play from the beginning, and then in this bar you see there's a sign for repeat. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna play again from the beginning, a second time this, and then you're going to go on. So you don't keep on repeating, it's not an endless repeat. It's just you repeat it once, so in total you play it 2 times, and then you continue on. So that is one way that we can see this repeat sign. So let me show you now another way in which you can see the repeat sign. So here we have another beautiful valse by Chopin. We see the very beginning starts here, and then when we reach bar 17, we see a repeat sign. But if you notice, you actually see it facing the other way. So I'll show you once more the image from last time. This one is facing the other way, and that is because, as you will just turn the page, we will come here to our repeat sign facing the other way. This, when you see a repeat sign facing this way, this means you have to repeat. And in this case, when you turn the page back, you don't repeat from the beginning, but you repeat from the part in which the repeat sign is facing the other way. So let's try that once more. We play until we see here the repeat sign facing with the ending with the bar line on the right side and the dots on the left side. That means we have to repeat. And here, when you see the bar line on the left side with the dots on the right side, that means from there is the section you have to repeat. So what you might have also noticed is that there's actually here a 1 and a 2. Now this is something that honestly students always do wrong at first, because it's a bit confusing. Sometimes it's a bit like a puzzle. Where do we go? Where do we repeat? Where do we end? Where do we continue? So I always tell my students, this is called a first ending and a second ending. First ending and second endings, you never play after each other. So that's something you have to remember. You cannot play a first ending and then a second ending. You play either or. So or you're playing a first ending or you're playing a second ending, never after each other. So what does that mean actually? So if we go back, we see we played it from the beginning. We were in bar 17, we were still playing. And then when we come to bar 48 for the first time, that is when we see the repeat sign which means that we have to go from bar 48 back to bar 17. So remember, we don't go back to the beginning because we have a repeat sign here. So you repeat it, right? Because that's what you did. We were in bar 17 this time for the second time. We're playing it, continuing on, blah, 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 blah. Okay, now you come here to bar 47. Now instead of going to bar 48, because we already played 48, we actually skip bar 48 and we go straight to bar 49. So that is what I meant when I said do not play 48 and 49 after each other. You play 48 once and you play 49 once. So you don't go the second time from 47 to 48 to 49. You don't do that. No, you go from 47 straight to 49. So the second time that you arrive, you skip ending 1 and you go straight to ending 2. First endings and second endings are pretty common. I have seen, however, of course, if you play many pieces, you see pretty much everything. You do have third and fourth endings, but it's all still the same. So the first time you go to ending 1, you do whatever is necessary in ending 1, and it's often a repeat. The second time you go to ending 2, maybe there's a repeat there as well. I don't know. The third time you go to ending 3, and so on. So that is how these endings work. You do either or. You never play them after each other. Okay, so now let's continue on to one of my favorites, because it actually took me many years to see the difference between these two, and I want to give you a head start and immediately tell you about them. Now, the first one here is DC en fine. This means, and it's sometimes written fully, this is an abbreviation of course, it's sometimes written fully, da capo al fine, DC or da capo al fine. You see both versions. So this means that when, and this is right underneath the first and second ending, by the way, which means that after the second ending, when you play the second ending, underneath the bar it says DC al fine, which means that after this bar, you repeat from the beginning until you see fine, which is actually here. Which means that if I just show you the entire piece, we play from the very beginning. Here we see a repeat sign. We don't see any other repeat signs, which means we have to repeat from the beginning. So we repeat. Then we continue on. We continue on. Here we see a first and second ending, which means the first time you repeat, which is back to bar 16. The second time you skip ending 1 and you go straight from this bar to ending number 2. Here you see a double bar line, which means a new section is coming. In this case, there's also a modulation. Then you continue on, and here we see a repeat sign again. However, it's on the bar line is on the left side, the dots are on the right side, so we're not repeating here yet. We're continuing on until we see here again another first and second ending. The first time we repeat from here to here. The second time we again skip the first ending. We jump straight to the second ending, which is underneath, it's written DC al fine, da capo al fine. So we go from here back to the beginning, which says fine. And that is the end. So despite the repeat sign, because we've already done that the first time, when you are playing DC al fine, you generally don't repeat it here a second time again. It's not necessarily wrong, it's just we usually don't do that. By that time, I mean you've already repeated it quite a lot. So you understand why I said that sometimes it's a bit of a puzzle. You have to just do this a couple of times and then you'll get the hang of it. So let's jump to a slight variation of this, which is dal segno al fine. It's basically almost the same thing as da capo al fine, and the alternative way to notate this is DS al fine, which is why I confused them endlessly when I was a student, when I was very young, because they look so similar and I wasn't very precise at that time. So DC al fine, DS al fine, it's kind of all the same. Well, it's not, because when you see DS al fine, you have to actually repeat from this sign. And the DC al fine means that you have to repeat from the beginning. So that is quite a difference. So in this case, let's check this one out. We have dal segno al fine, which means that we have to find this sign. This sign. So we have to scan and we see this sign is actually here. So when we see this, we have to find the sign and start there, which means we start from this bar. We start again in this bar. So let's walk through this one just as we did before. We start, we see this one, but we can ignore it for now because the vertical stripe's on the left, the dots are on the right. So we continue on. We see a first and second ending. And the first time we repeat, and we repeat from here. The second time we skip the first ending. We go straight from bar 11 to bar 13. We continue on, ignoring this repeat for now because, look over here, we already have the repeat sign, which means that this entire system we have to repeat again. So we do that, we continue on, we see a first and second ending here. With the first ending, we go back to here. Then we repeat, we skip the first ending, and we go straight to the second ending. You see here, and again, another double bar line indicating that something new is coming because it's the trio this time. And then we continue on. Now we see dal segno al fine, which means we need to find the sign. There it is. We play until we see the fine word. So now I have to actually search because there it is. There is the fine. So that is how this one is played. Now I want to look at one more variation of this with you. DS al coda. So you remember we just had DS al fine. So this is slightly different. When you see this, you do have to repeat from the sign, which was this sign. So it means that when we arrive here, we jump straight from here to this sign and start playing. But instead of playing until you reach fine, you play until you reach the sign coda, the coda sign. When you see this sign, you jump, you skip everything else, you jump straight to the part that has another one of these signs, which is, it's the sign for coda. So when you see DS al coda instead of DS al fine, you see DS al coda, you jump from here to the sign, you go until you find the coda sign, and you jump to the other coda sign. Often it's written to coda, but not always. And often it's written coda, but not always. And here, when you reach the coda, you play the coda until the end. Another variation of this, a lot of variations on this particular idea, is the exact same thing, but instead of DS al coda, you would see DC al coda. Now the only different thing that you have to do is when you see DC al coda, you have to repeat from the beginning instead of repeating it from the sign. So it's the same thing, but when you see DC al coda, you repeat from the beginning until you see the coda sign, and you jump straight past everything else immediately to the coda. So I think that I got most common variations here for you. I hope that this clarified things for you. Sometimes it's a bit of a puzzle. I always experience it a little bit as a treasure hunt. But once you get used to, this is very common, and well, you'll know how to navigate through your pieces. A lot of, obviously, as I showed you, a lot of Chopin pieces have this. You'll definitely meet these kinds of endings often throughout your musical journey. So I hope it was useful to you. As always, leave a comment. Thank you so much for watching. It was a pleasure. Don't forget to check out our social media, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. I think that was it. Thank you so much. See you next week.